And so that's why I encourage everyone, it's worth to first optimize yourself. And if you don't like the term optimize, and just maybe say, well, I want to feel a little bit better, I want to be more aware, I want to be healthier. But use science and use technology as a way to get there. Because it's based on solid facts, and it's like this crutch that gets you there because you can't walk yet. So use the data to guide you, and at some point, you don't need it anymore, right? So I don't need to measure like now on an ongoing basis my LPA, right? My awareness level. I don't care that much anymore. I know it's okay. It could always be more, for sure, right? But at some point it's not needed. And so that's why I think personally it helped me a lot to get into the state where I'm now. I have no clue where it gets me in the future. But I know if I'm, from my side, becoming aware of my mind and body and make sure they're in good shape and do the best I can. And of course, now I help others to achieve the same thing. Yes. So that's why I think my mission is around helping others to achieve the same state and get these breakthroughs. Because, as you said, there's only one life. You deserve it to basically experience life at fullest, not in the shadow of all this noise of thought activity with a potentially sick body, right? So there is ways what you can do, whatever state you're in, and the mind and the awareness is at the end the foundation.
Fantastic. We'll love you for this because we're living in difficult times. We're living in challenging times. And a lot of what is happening outside of us is controlling what is happening on the inside of us. And, all of us want to live better lives. We want to have the best option of our lives. We want to talk about the unlived potential. There's so much of unleashing of the giants within. It's amazing how much is happening around us. And it's all about the epicenter of the storms in life is in one place, and that is in the mind. And so if we are able to really tap into the mind, if we're able to really get into the mind, if we're able to really control our choices, our decisions, and our responses, we'll be a better people and living a better life. I've always made this statement that we are not a product of our choices and byproduct of whatever, but we are a product of our choices, not a byproduct of our responses. And so making the right choices, making the right decisions depends upon how we are wired up here in the mind. My guest today is going to show us how to get to a place where we want to be. All of us want to be in the right place at the right time, in the right moment to make the right decisions. And his name is Dr. Reiner Kraft. He's a seasoned technology leader. He's an engineer. He's a scientist. He's a technical advisor. He's an epigenetics expert. He's a speaker. He's also a musician. He plays the piano and drums. And the most important of all, he has pioneered what is called the mindful leadership methodologies in the past 10 years. And he's in charge of all this tech advancement that is going on. We spent 20 years in the Silicon Valley and in the past 7 years in Berlin, in Germany. And he's worked with high-tech companies like Yahoo and IBM Research and Zalando. This is a man who is really at the right time in the right place. And, he is considered a top innovator. He's considered to be one of those mind-making mind kind of guys, from the Silicon Valley. He's a prolific inventor. I could go on and on and on, but suffice to say that we want to meet the man himself. And so coming to us live from Germany, here, please welcome Dr. Reiner Kraft. Hello, Reiner.
Hey, thanks, Charles, for the introduction.
My pleasure, and good morning to you.
Yeah, in your case, it's already afternoon, so happy to be here, and yeah.
I can tell you one thing, we're all going to have breakfast with you today, and I want to thank you. But before I start, let me just have this opportunity to congratulate you for all your work that you have done. It is an immense contribution to science. It's an immense contribution to the world, especially in the technology sector. And I think this is something that all of us are very proud of. And I'm extremely excited to have a scientist like you, joining me on HEARTtalk. So once again, congratulations for your great effort.
Thanks, Charles. Yeah, happy to be here.
Amen, amen. And before I continue, what's that picture behind you?
Yeah, that's basically a piece of art around the brain, right? It shows the brain. There's some science symbols in there, so it looks pretty cool. And
it is.
That's one of my focus areas is around the brain, the mind that originates out of the brain. And so I figured I have to have something here that is a little bit inspiring as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And but one part of it is dark and the other one has got some groovy colors to it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're going to get us into that brain that's behind there on the wall and make it come alive. And you're surrounded by some very interesting stuff around you. There's another one down there, Yodo. Is that right?
It's like a little Yoda.
Yoda. Yeah.
Yoda, it's called Krogu, right? It's I like his presence around here.
Yeah, it keeps your mind young at heart, right? Anyway, but I want to start off with this, Reiner. Now, in this city called Kota Kinabalu, we have certain malls, plazas, and if you go to this particular mall called Karamunsing, in Singapore, we have what's called the Laoyat Plaza, There are certain malls, and in certain levels, there's nothing but computers, your laptops, everything, technology is on that particular level. So if I want to go to this particular mall called Karamunsing and I want to get my laptop sorted out, I go to the third floor. And when you go to the third floor and the lift opens, there's a shop right in front with this on the signboard which says, "Your mind is your software." And it says, and below it has these words: we debug, we hack, we improve, and we rewrite your mind. And the service engineer, his name is Dr. Reiner Kraft. Okay? So today I feel as if I'm entering into a computer store and meeting the engineer himself. Now I'm going to start right there. How in the living world did the mind become a software for you, and the brain and the body become the hardware? Well, take us into that world of computer, how it works inside of your whole life today.
Yeah, well, when I started my career back in the mid-90s, I'm a trained computer scientist, and I got fascinated by computers at that point because even before that, before I studied computer science, I got into the very first very simple computers in these days, and I got into programming. And so what fascinated me was that you can write this little piece of code, right, some instructions, and then the computer is executing it. And if it doesn't work, then that's called a bug, right? There is a problem in it. So I can fix it. Then all of a sudden it works correctly, and it does its work over and over again. And that was, for me, was fascinating, right? When I was talking with people, my observation at that point was they were not behaving like computers. It was exactly the opposite, right? They completely random. When you talk with people, you never know what's coming back and how they interact. And it was so refreshing that you go to this computer and type something in, and then all of a sudden the computer would do it properly if the code was right. And then you could also, I learned over many years when I myself as a programmer, then I got deeper and deeper in programming. I learned all kinds of different programming languages. I worked on large-scale projects back in these old days at IBM Research or at Yahoo. And the code complexity was getting higher and higher, right? We were working with 100,000 lines of code or even more, right? Like really large systems. And then you also learn that the complexity of the system and the architecture, all of a sudden you're talking about software architecture. And then you also learn how to optimize software, because one software could be very efficient doing something and the other one could be not efficient at all. So it's not just buggy, but it's also efficiency. And so that inspired me to, because as a programmer, you want to write efficient code. And so that's where my thinking comes from. And then just 10 years ago, at some point, when I got, for me, this was a time of transition where I, from a work perspective, I was doing more and more work. And eventually I ran into what I refer to as mental exhaustion. It's just that at some point, the mind, there is limits to the processing if you're not taking care of it properly. So I'm now talking about the brain, because the brain is the physical aspect that actually does the work. So that's why I like this analogy, hardware, software. The brain or the body itself is hardware in a computer scientist way of thinking. It makes sure that you have capabilities that the software, the mind, at the end of the day can run. And that already hints to the points that, well, if it's software, can I basically make a better software out of it? Can I upgrade it? Can I optimize it? So this is the way I'm coming from. And since I'm working with techies primarily, but also other leaders or other people who are interested in this type of work, they appreciate this analogy because it resonates well with them. They understand what hardware is, they understand what software is, and if they see their own mind as software, then, interesting, then I can do something actually about it. Right? And so this is how I got into this. But for me, the transition was more becoming more aware. I think the transition for me was really getting into mindfulness. This was like at once, right? When I all of a sudden felt myself in a new environment around becoming more and more aware. And I think that made then the shift towards more focusing, instead of focusing on computer systems, focusing more on the mind. And then later also focusing more on the body, because I realized the importance of both in good shape. Not just the mind can be not in great shape if the body is in poor shape. So they belong together. And so it was transition in a nutshell.
You know, listen, I'm hearing you out and I'm hearing myself at the same time, because, I stepped into this whole world of mindfulness about 2 years ago when I founded the first Asia Pacific consultation on marketplace mindfulness. And as a plastic surgeon myself, my whole life was nothing but just operating and patience and fixing things. But when I stepped into this whole world of mindfulness, I realized how much I had missed out in my own life. And I wish I had my computer with me and I would have met you and taken my computer to you. And you would have debugged all the bugs in it. And I would have had and spared a scar on my chest. But now coming into the epicenter of the storms of life is the word mind. And for me, I just did a surgery three weeks ago with a neurosurgeon. And while he was operating, he was taking out the brain tumor, Reiner. And it was about 7-8 hours of surgery. And I came in to do the scalp rotation flap to close the hole. And so I stooped over his shoulder and I said, "What's that?" And he said, "That's the tumor, Charles." And then I asked him, "Where's the mind?" And he turned around and looked at me and he says, "What on earth are you talking about?" But a lot of us as doctors, professionals are out there in the world operating, but we have no control of what is happening in the mind because of pure sheer ignorance. So I want to step into it because the more I hear you talking on computer language, it's as if the mind is a language of codes. And this is very interesting. That's why this particular conversation with you, I want to go to something very basic, because there are many of the audience listening in who are just thrown into this world of language, and that is mind and mindset and mindful thinking and mindfulness. It's all jargon that's in the marketplace. What is your idea of the term mindset? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I think the analogy of the software, instructions, memory, so the full package, which is at the end, it's a mental construct. It's the story that you believe is your life, right? You're telling you this story. Oh, I grew up here, then I did this, and then I met these people, and then I basically have chosen some profession. So there's the story and all those things that you're going to do. These are all basically mental concepts that the mind puts together, and there is memory, like in a computer, right? You store experiences, short-term, long-term, and it's basically I would go one step further, that the software itself, of course, has a purpose to create something, because every software is creating something at the end of the day, right? Whatever it is, it could be an app that you play some video game with, or it could be some invoicing, billing software. So the mind software, or sometimes I refer to it also as the mind operating system, the output is your ego, your personality, so to speak.
Right.
So that is what the mind is doing. So it's running, it's producing the ego. And then, the mindset itself, I would say, is could be seen as certain aspects of your personality, of your ego, right? So the way you basically, the way things come out, right? You want to be a more bold person. You want to be a more anxious or stressed person. So these are all different traits that coming up as a result of the mind software running, basically. So ego, at the end, this is the story of your life, and this is what you believe you are, is at the end of the day nothing more than an output of software, so to speak.
Okay. Well, you make the codes very straightforward and simple, but we do know that, I've worked for 40 years now in the market field. And so it's really like, psychologists talk about different types of mindsets. And, they talk about learning mindset, global mindset, rigid mindset. There are all different connotations to the word mindset. I think very much like Facebook, I have one account, personal account, and then there are several pages. And it's as if you have one mind, but you've got many mindsets inside that all those different pages. And you can just press a button and switch, which I'm going to come to you later when you talk about switching from one state to the other. So one of those pages is as what you are now an authority on, and that is called high performance mindset. So that is one of the many pages. And like in Facebook, some pages are dead, some pages are alive, some pages are very active. And so I want to go into this whole concept of what you talk about, which is called the high performance mindset, because that's the optimal mindset of unlocking the best version of ourselves, the best version. You got a key. And I want to have a spare key too, whatever key you're using, because a lot of what's been happening in my mind has been locked up. And so I'm going to ask you something which I just had a podcast conversation, Reiner, last week. And this statement was made. 95% of our decisions are made in the unconscious mind. And the mind is in automation. It's like as if it's an autopilot. And 5% are really made in the conscious form of decision making. So when you talk about high performance mindset, how do you take out 95%, which is in the unconscious cabinet, and start bringing it out so that it becomes alive and start becoming the main process or what we are living out to be a best performer in our lives. Talk to us about that. True or true?
Yeah, no, the research definitely shares and confirms these numbers. Sometimes it's 95, 80, 98% or even more subconscious decision. And subconscious decision itself are not bad, or autopilot is not bad. I mean, think about if you drive a car, if you have to do this consciously, you probably couldn't do anything else, or very quickly would basically crash somewhere.
Yeah.
So subconscious decision making has a lot of benefits. It's much faster. The speed of processing speed is so much faster, in fact. So that using and leveraging the subconscious mind is a good thing. But of course, when it goes too far, so there is still always a sweet spot. Do I want to have a subconscious mind when we now have a conversation together about this topic? Right. Should I leave this by autopilot? Probably wouldn't work, right? So being conscious requires more energy. The body needs to create also more energy for this. So there is a problem, right? It's harder. And you think about the mind software and the body, right? It needs to provide a source of energy like a battery. And the battery, when you have a good night of sleep, in the morning, you basically is fully loaded. And then when you do conscious decisions, they suck up energy. If you do subconscious decisions, they don't cost energy. They're basically automated. They're not really costing you energy. So the mental power is this battery, and the battery over the course of the day, at some point depletes. Okay? So if there's not much left of the battery at some point, then it's harder to make even conscious decision. And some of you may experience, or also myself may experience, more toward the evening, there is not much left. That means there is decision fatigue, right? So that at that point you start making poor decisions as well. So that is another aspect of this, that battery is an issue. The underlying source of all of this is pure awareness, right? Being aware in the present moment. This is basically the state when you are fully there. And you don't have to think in that state. You just be here, you experience, right? You basically notice what's going out around you, what's happening around you. But at that point, there is still no thinking. So you could, to be fully aware, to be fully connected to the present moment, as a theoretical example, you can sit all day, maybe in nature, or you sit at work, wherever you are, you could be fully present. And that is not really requiring energy. It happens effortlessly. And then occasionally, there is some conscious thinking coming in that burns energy, but it is helpful to do it, right? If you want to solve some particular problem or whatever it is, you need this conscious thinking. And you want to take advantage of the subconscious mind. So again, driving the car is a good example, or playing the piano. I don't want to relearn this all the time. So I want to take advantage of this subconscious mind in terms of where it can be helpful for me. But awareness is the underlying driver. So I become aware that I sit in front of the piano, and then without effort, I start playing it. I leverage the subconscious mind. And then someone may enter the room and ask me some question. And now, this is important. This is what typically happens, is the importance at that point is keeping this level of awareness and not letting your subconscious mind basically answer the question. It could be, right? Let's say you're, I don't know, friend comes in, your spouse comes in, and so you're not really noticing that person. You're just in whatever you're doing. So the mind is doing some stuff, even subconscious or conscious level, whatever it is, but you're not fully there. And now you're doing a reply using the subconscious mind, basically thinking also about possibly other things, not really being present. And so you can see now these three dimensions. There is presence, then there is subconscious, and then there's conscious. And subconscious and conscious both have a justification. They make perfectly sense. but being aware what you use at any given point in time. This is the art of awareness, right? This is where awareness kicks in.
Right. So this is phenomenal, because you're able to kind of put thinking process like a computer. You know, you want to step up the RAM. You want to have the speed a bit faster. But when you talk about high performance mind, where are you tapping from? Because 95% of it is automated. And what you're saying is 5% is where all the decision making is being made in the conscious mind. So when you say high performance, what is the movement here? You're trying to cut down the 95% that is sleeping and bring it into the conscious level. Is that correct? Put some sense to it and spin it.
Yeah, I mean, the term high performance mindset, I started using it a few years ago. And my realization was, at some point, there's a lot of research out there. They're not looking at in terms of what is the terms of subconscious decision, like a 95 or 98% or whatever. They're also investigating how many thoughts are you producing every day, right? And there the numbers are anywhere between 50 to 70,000, probably even more thoughts per day that the mind is generating. And many of them on a subconscious level, obviously, because of the 95%. And then some of these subconscious, they made it up, they bubble up into the conscious. So at the end of the day, there is this large amount of thoughts. And if you do a division in terms of, let's say your wake time is 16 hours, where you're fully awake, then you sleep 8 hours. In this time you're awake, then you have this, 60, 70, 80,000 thoughts. Now divide this by 16 hours, right? That you see how many are this per hour. And if you break it down per second, you'll realize this is actually a huge number. And the number can be confirmed. So one of the first experiments I did was, how many thoughts per minute do I actually have? Because as a scientist, I want to know, okay, what's going on in my mind, right? Is this real? They tell me there's 80,000 thoughts or 50,000, whatever. And so at that point, I was in a position that my level of awareness already had increased, definitely over a period of a few years. So I did a lot of meditation. And so it was not too difficult then to sit down for a few minutes. So the experiment was sit down for 3 minutes and then set yourself an intention, maybe not to have any thoughts. This is actually the fun part. And then you keep observing, but every time a thought pops up into the conscious mind, something pops up, you basically make a note, you count it. You do this for 3 minutes, and then you come up with a number, then the timer goes off, right? So 3 minutes, you count the number of thoughts that pop up, and then you divide it by 3, so now you have thoughts per minute, and you can do that at different times of the day, like you can do it in the morning,
right?
Be it lunchtime, in the evening, so you get different data points, and that tells you there's a lot of thought activity usually, right? If I start working with client, and they start measuring this over a few weeks, and they may have numbers like, 15 thoughts per second, as an example. And now going back to high performance, is it if now you know actually that if you know the fact that 98 or 99% of these thoughts are completely useless, right?
Absolutely.
Completely useless. You're rehashing the past, you're thinking about some stuff in the future, which is not even relevant. You're thinking about maybe something, what you want to have for food, for dinner, as an example. And so all of this stuff, most of these thoughts, unfortunately, are useless. And now the brain, on the other hand, needs to generate a lot of energy. I mentioned before, there's the battery, right? And the brain, for conscious thinking, it requires energy, right? So any thought at the end of the day requires energy, because on a biochemical level, you have to move electrons around to generate this energy. The energy is actually produced in our so-called mitochondria, which are little organelles in our cells. They power the cells, sometimes called the powerhouses of the cells.
Yes.
And so these little guys, these mitochondria, they have to work hard to produce this energy to move these electrons around at the end of the day that produce those salts. And now the majority, 98%, is garbage, right? Is that performance, high performance? No, it's waste, right? So it's a big waste of energy that, and the brain sucks up about 20% of total energy day and night, right? So it's a major energy piece that basically needs a lot of energy as part compared to the other bodies and organs in the body. And so the problem then is high performance mind. When I thought about this term, the realization was, this is not high performance. So what would be high performance? Well, high performance would be if I'm present most time of the day, probably not all the time, but the majority of the time, that my thought activity is close to zero, right? So there is basically no thoughts anymore. But if I then have to solve a problem, or if I want to do some creative work or whatever it is, then I can start using the mind as a tool, like a surgeon, right? Very surgically. Then I start using the energy, I tap into it, I use it deliberately. That is high performance. Powerful. But to do this, this is the important part, the high performance mind requires also a high performing body. It needs those little mitochondria, those cells. They need to produce energy very effectively, and for your body to do this, it needs to be in a really good shape. If your body is basically as a result of constant chronic stress, the body is not performing well anymore. So those mitochondria, again, if you look at them as a battery for each cell, like little batteries, and it has a percentage. Let's say you could actually see like a little percentage what's in the battery of every cell, right? And if you see that every cell has maybe an average of, I don't know, let's say 40%, 30% left, that's not high performance, right? With a 30% energy in your cells on average, how can you support a high performance mind? You won't, right? So you would be, sometimes people are happy that they can even get up or take a few steps and move a little bit. For everything you need energy. So high performance mind requires a high performing body as well. So a healthy body in a state of well-being. It means all your cells, they need to be in a happy state, and in a state of well-being, so that the energy charge in these cells is maybe 80%, 90%. So there's a lot of energy to draw from, right? And then as the brain, the hardware is comprised all of these cells and all of these little mitochondria. There is especially many mitochondria in your brain. And so that means if those cells are firing like crazy and they have all this energy, and now you're not using this energy for all this random garbage that's going on in your mind, right? You're not getting identified with this continuous thought activity. Eventually what's going to happen is that thought activity, as the mind is smart, the mind realizes you don't care about these thoughts anymore if you ignore them, right? You look at them, interesting, but you know what? I don't need these thoughts now, right? Let them pass. They pass by. And eventually, not from today to tomorrow, but usually over a process of weeks and months, the mind notices, I produce all these 15 thoughts per second, but this guy doesn't care, right? So I produce less and less and less. And all of a sudden, you're down to a very low level, maybe 1 thought per minute, 2 thoughts per minute, or even down to 0. There is no thought activity anymore, right? Yes. And at that point, now you can harvest this energy and redirect it to stuff that actually matters. This is what I refer to a high performance mind. Of course, you could use other terms. I figured I like the term performance because it shows or illustrates this issue of this energy waste, basically, what usually goes on.
Listen, this is, I don't know what term to use, but this is really phenomenal because, much of my practice in plastic surgery, aesthetics, it's all about the mitochondria. No wonder you got a T-shirt with the word mitochondriac on it. And, everything I talk about smart aging is about spicing up the mitochondria, to perform more than it's supposed to do. And so when women walk in here and they have this tiredness and they're all drained out and they want to have a rejuvenated experience, it's all about the mitochondria. In fact, I told them, if you have a daughter, name her Mitochondria, because because it's a reminder. Yeah, it's a reminder of what we can do. Now, you talk about estimating the LPA. I did a post today on LinkedIn about LPA, and this level of present awareness is critical, because I think the whole concept of high performance starts with awareness, right? And this is the whole philosophy and the thinking of mindfulness coming in now, where it's just simple awareness in the present moment of what is happening. And it's about growth in that presence. We want to grow, as you said, harness the right energy to grow in the right direction. That's going to amplify what we want best in our lives. And I think that's a very powerful. So when you talk about leveraging on the latest science as we come towards the end of this, you talk about cutting edge technology towards a high performance mindset. You talk about the strategies, and I want to take you through one by one very quickly so that people have a nice concept of your mind, because it's fantastic what you're saying. It's exciting me. Can anybody learn this high performance mindset? I mean, can anybody, is there an age limit, you know?
So this is the cool thing. So I was thinking about that. I know some people, sometimes you read stories in books, and sometimes there's a very drastic stories. They all of a sudden they wake up and they feel like completely enlightened. They feel like completely, ooh, here I am, right? They have no clue how this happened. Usually there is a relation to deep suffering. So a lot of suffering can trigger an instant breakthrough of awareness. But for the rest of us, unfortunately, that's not the case. It's more an incremental process, right? So, and I figured, well, if it's an incremental process, what can I do to positively influence it, to cultivate more awareness? So those were the ideas. How can I do that? And can it also be done in a systematic way?
Right.
So for me, of course, I also had, I mean, when I started going into mindfulness, I had no clue what mindfulness is. I simply was stressed, and then Yahoo offered a class on mindfulness-based stress reduction, and I figured, oh, I can try this out. Let's do this, right? And then I went to this class over 8 weeks. It's a global standardized setting, MBSR, that anyone can have probably has simple access to. Did a little bit of meditation for the first time in my life, and it felt good. And I got into, sometimes without knowing, I got into all of a sudden very deep states of meditation. It was like, felt so natural, right? But this was already after I had too much stress over time, right? I was close to some burnout. And then for me, it was actually like this. I basically, in the middle of the night, all of a sudden, I lie in bed. I thought I'm basically dying, thinking, wait, there's some heart attack. Then the ambulance emergency came and all that stuff. And they drove me to the hospital, right? They put me on all these machines, drove me to the hospital. And that was the first time I experienced pure awareness for me, because I was completely calm. And I was pretty much like observing myself, lying in this car, driving to the hospital. And that was this experience that said, oh, wow, what is this, right? It was so pleasant, because there were no thoughts anymore. Thoughts were gone. It was just experiencing. It was calmness, peace, basically peace, right? And meditation then brought me back into these states. It was always a glimpse of going back into the state. And the question was, however, what they don't teach you in the MBSR, you do a little bit here, some breathing exercises, all good stuff. But for me as a scientist, I wanted to know, how can I do this very systematically? How can I validate it's working? And so the first concept you mentioned before, level of present awareness, was something that came up when I thought about how can I measure that I'm actually aware, and how long is, more importantly, I'm looking for a practical purpose. Consciousness or awareness itself is not an object. It's unlimited. It's basically anywhere, everywhere. It's not something that you can grasp. It's just you experience everything through
in the moment,
through awareness, and therefore it can't be measured. But what I figured what can be measured is the impact. Basically, how present are you over the course of the day? So if the day is 16 hours, again, my example, what if I'm present for 1 minute, just 1 minute? And I refer to this as the unit as a mindful minute. So if I present for 1 minute, I collected 1 mindful minute, well, I could be present another minute. Then I would be present for 2 minutes, so 2 mindful minutes. So now think about if you actually start measuring this, track it, you keep track of your mindful minutes over the day. And I ask actually people I work with, I ask them to exactly do that. Let's track your mindful minutes. And then there is tech out there, right? There is like smartphones. They have little apps installed, like meditation apps that keep track of things. I use one of these Oura Ring devices, which is also keeping track of stuff, what's going on. And it's at the end of the day, it also tracks mindful minutes. So in the evening, you can sit back, you can look at your tech. The tech tells you, oh, you meditated for 20 minutes in a deep state. And of course, you can track things that you can't track with tech. Like let's say you take a shower. Are you actually being fully there when you take the shower? Are you present? Do you experience and feel the water on your skin, right? When you drink a coffee, are you actually drinking it with awareness, right? Are you fully there? Or is it just you put it in there, you don't even realize it's coffee, right? So little things like this, brushing your teeth. Are you actually present when you brush your teeth? Here you have 2 mindful minutes. It's that simple, right? So be present when you brush your teeth. That's my advice. You got 2 minutes in the morning, maybe 2 in the evening when you brush it, 4 mindful minutes. If you collect these mindful minutes over the day, let's say you have 10 mindful minutes collected over the day. 16 hours is roughly about 1,000 minutes. So this represents about 10 minutes, represents roughly 1%. And this is your level of present awareness, LPA. So you're 1% present, the rest of the time, you're basically in this, caught in your thought activity, right? In the subconscious mind and doing all that stuff. Right. And so you can see if someone has an LPA, usually people, when they haven't done it, it takes a few weeks to establish a baseline like this. But the baseline is usually about 2%. This is an average untrained mind. People have an LPA of 2%. That's it's not a scientific, in that sense, validated number, but it's just based on anecdotal experience. When you work with hundreds of people, and when they do this baseline, and they usually come back with 2%, sometimes 3%, sometimes less, then you can see, it's about 2%. But now the beauty is, when you use this approach and you can measure it, so you can measure it over time, you can do interventions, you can do mindfulness exercises, breathing exercises, you can accumulate more of these mindful minutes. That means you become more present. And then you can measure the progress. And if I get people up to 10% or even 20% of LPA, that means 10 or 20% of their day they're fully present. This is a major breakthrough. This is so significant because now a large fraction of your time, you're just fully there with everything you do. And people, once you get into a habit, once you break some of these barriers, once you get up to 10%, 15% or more LPA, awareness is rising and it's getting more and more. And the beauty of it is you're not going back, right? Once you accumulate it, because now you're so aware that you actually become aware when you're doing old stuff that you did before. Like, let's say you take these French fries and shovel it in, right? With an LPA of 10% or 20%, usually you immediately realize, what are these French fries? What am I doing here? Why I'm doing this to my body? It's not healthy. Doesn't make sense, right? So awareness to the rescue. Awareness will actually then help you to become healthier. And so that's why it's the awareness is the underlying currency. LPA is the currency. With more LPA, the body usually automatically becomes healthier as well, because you learn what you have to do to keep your body healthy. You learn actually how to make your mitochondria happier and more energized by doing the right things in your lifestyle. There's no magic here. It's simple things. Sleep well, eat well, right, and exercise well. And of course, there's a lot of knowledge there that you have to build up over many years. That's why I got fascinated on the body itself as well. It could be a topic for another episode.
Sure.
But the problem was here, when I looked all of this back, awareness is key. Measuring awareness is important on the way of getting there, becoming more aware. At some point, the measuring is not that important anymore. Because once you have reached a level of 10-20% LPA, that's fine. Right? So, but you can see it's the methodology to get you there, and everyone can do it. And of course, sometimes people tell me, oh yeah, that measuring thing, that's not for me. I'm doing this like natural thing, a little bit meditation here and there. And then I say, yeah, sure, that works. That can be by luck, of course. You can also make some progress, and that's fine. Everyone can do what they want to do. But usually, if you really want progress, this is what I learned from computer science and from managing large, complex software projects or products. You measure, build, measure, learn. This is a method. It works very well. If I would be in a tech company and I would tell them, if the boss asks me how's the project doing or how's the product doing, and I would say, I don't really know. It feels good, right? But there is no. And then maybe the boss would ask me, what are the numbers? Show me the numbers, right? I say, these numbers are not important. We're doing this just by looking at things, and
trial and error.
I would be fired, right? I would be fired.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, what you're saying is really, a wealth of knowledge, because, even in us as scientists and science and minded people, professionals, it's all about evidence-based medicine, and but if I'm a busy professional and I'm operating and somebody's a CEO and all that, they'll have to make time to do this kind of LPAs, right?
No, that's the part. They don't have to make time.
Okay.
That's the beauty of this. They can do it even when they're stressed out and their full schedule, because all what they're doing is becoming aware for little blurbs over the day, right? They become aware when they brush their teeth. They're brushing their teeth anyhow, right? But now they're brushing it with awareness. That means they pay fully attention, being mindful what's happening when they brush their teeth. They actually feel the teeth. And at that point, if you mindfully brush your teeth, I encourage you, do an experiment. If you do one thing you want to get out of this episode today, brush your teeth mindfully, and you'll actually notice that it takes 2 minutes. Remember the dentist always talking about 2 minutes brushing the teeth? Yeah. I never could do it. 30 seconds, I was done. Right? So automated, in and out. But if you do it mindfully, it takes 2 minutes. Otherwise, you can't do a good job. And so that means with things that you already do, right? Like drinking your coffee, brushing your teeth, taking a shower, being mindful in meetings, actually paying attention, not thinking about the next thing that the other person is anticipate that you want to say back, right? Your answer. No, be present in meetings. And so now you can see that without extra time effort, you're collecting these mindful minutes and awareness goes up. So,
it increases your productivity, isn't it?
And exactly, now productivity goes up, and all of a sudden you gain back time. So these guys starting the training usually after 4 to 6 weeks, they say, my goodness, I have two extra hours per day, because they're not wasting it anymore with all this garbage that they typically do, browsing social media streams and basically all these distraction. They become aware of distraction and they notice, oh, this is a distraction. Why am I doing this? It's not fun. I'm just doing it for being somehow distracted. it doesn't make sense. And all of a sudden, these distractions get minimized with awareness, and all of a sudden you gain 2 hours back. And then, so if you gain 2 hours back every day, this is a full day that you gain back over a week. Now think about what these CEOs all of a sudden can do if you give them an extra day, right? Isn't that amazing?
It's amazing. It's not only amazing, it's a revolution. How has this whole philosophy and revolution of thinking of the mind, how has it been played out in your own life? Just close with that chapter of a very personal touch to this whole field of mindfulness and mindset thinking.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Reflecting back, I was in a pretty bad state. I mean, 10 years ago, where I think many people are in this state now, chronic stress, no time for anything, no balance, lack of balance. And then physical symptoms creep up. There's all kind of, as we all know, stress leads to all kind of type of things that are not healthy for our body. And so it was a pretty bad state. And then over my journey in the past 10 years, especially in the past, I would say 2 or 3 years, when I put this all together, when I was systematically working on raising my awareness, but also upgrading the mind, as it is software, right? So it can be upgraded. There's a lot of research out there, neurosciences. I got deep into neurosciences, how you can reprogram the mind. There's all kind of different techniques, and they work. And it helped me to unclutter the mind, to really find time to stuff that matters, and also figuring out what my own purpose is and my own mission, vision, where I want to go. So that was a big insight that worked over the years, and still evolving. And then the second, I think the most important aspect also of the body, being healthy again, in a sense that I have my mitochondria basically they're firing up. I know how to measure them. Even there is so many different biomarkers and tests out there, how you can measure your mitochondrial energy. I'll optimize my mitochondrial energy, and I appreciate when these little guys are basically helping me to have these level of energy. So at the end, personally, I feel better than ever. I probably feel 10, 20 years younger than I was in terms of mental performance in general, healthy state of body and mind. And so that helped me a lot, because now I can focus on an application level. I can focus on things that matter and that have some impact, and I can do it effortlessly. It's just a different lifestyle. And so that's why I encourage everyone, it's worth to first optimize yourself. And if you don't like the term optimize, and just maybe say, well, I want to feel a little bit better, I want to be more aware, I want to be healthier. But use science and use technology as a way to get there. Because it's based on solid facts, and it's like this crutch that gets you there because you can't walk yet. So use the data to guide you, and at some point, you don't need it anymore, right? So I don't need to measure like now on an ongoing basis my LPA, right? My awareness level. I don't care that much anymore. I know it's okay. It could always be more, for sure, right? But at some point it's not needed. And so that's why I think personally it helped me a lot to get into the state where I'm now. I have no clue where it will gets me in the future. But I know if I'm, from my side, becoming aware of my mind and body, and make sure they're in good shape and do the best I can. And of course, now I help others to achieve the same thing. Yes. So that's why I think my mission is around helping others to achieve the same state and get these breakthroughs. Because, as you said, there's only one life. You deserve it to basically experience life at fullest, not in the shadow of all this noise of thought activity with a potentially sick body, right? So there is ways what you can do, whatever state you're in, and the mind and the awareness is at the end the foundation.
So on that note, Dr. Reiner Kraft, thank you very much for joining us on HEARTtalk. It's been a delightful hour, actually, and I know I feel young already, because I know the greatest friend we can all have is a lady called mitochondria. And it's a bean, it's called the little bean that's in all of us. And I want to thank you once again for all this beautiful, wonderful, powerful insight into how we can be a better version of ourselves.